If you have any problems like allergies or phobia with respect to insects, then please consult a doctor before you watch this video. Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Angela, and yes, today's video is about 12 texts that deal with insects. Yep. And we also in a little bit a different location, because downstairs where I normally film, which is also my studio where I work, yeah, it's a bit wild in there because I'm in the middle of a bigger project. And yes, me being in the middle of a project is also one of the reasons why the videos are a little bit irregular at the moment. Okay, insects and yeah, speculative fiction. So today we're looking more at what I would call science fiction, because yeah, I think that the insects are just lending themselves a little bit better to a science fiction theme. Insects seem to be very fascinating to us, and I think the main reason, of course, is they're so different. We do not imagine them with a lot of brain power normally, but they also are a little bit uncanny in the fact that they share some similarities with us. So some insects are living in larger communities, and that's kind of like very weirdly similar to our way of living in cities and in states. So we have that aspect, and also insects are able to communicate with each other. That's another aspect where yeah, they seem to have languages like we humans, no? They're not kind of like, how shall I say, sound based and word based like our languages. They are more like scent based, like pheromones, or movement like the dance of the bees, to communicate with each other, but still they seem to have communication like we do. So that makes them really weird, because they don't look at all like us. They have exoskeletons, they have weird secretions, they're really gross at times, no? And then we have this other element where they are weirdly and strangely close to us. So the stories I'm looking at today span from the late 19th century all into the 21st century, and let's have a look what those texts are about. So the first one is by Nathaniel Hawthorne from 1844, and it's a short story with the title The Artist of the Beautiful. Now, this is by some regarded as one of the very first American science fiction stories, and we have a protagonist who builds artificial mechanical insects. And it's probably also one of the very first texts that explore this idea of mechanical insects, which is one strand of where this whole idea of insects and humans and what we find fascinating about them goes. This type of biomechanical futures where if we can recreate insects, then we might be able to actually maybe even recreate life. And so this story by Hawthorne is then also somehow like an exploration of what's life, what makes us human. And this is one of the, as I say, earliest examples. I very recently talked about this book on my channel, Automatic Eve by Inue, a Japanese author. This is from a very different tradition, but it shows as well, yeah, that we, irrespective perhaps of our cultures, find insects quite compelling and interesting to explore. This is not primarily about insects. This is about all types of automatons, but we're also introduced to the weird and wonderful world of competitive cricket fighting. and one competitor introduces a mechanical cricket into the tournament, and this has dire consequences that ripple somehow. It's like a ripple effect that goes through the whole novel. And yeah, like Hawthorne's text, this is also an exploration of what makes us human, what is love, how do we connect with other humans, but also with other creatures in general. And this is quite a bit later than Hawthorne's text, because this is from 2014. My next example is from 1915, and it's a German text. It's Franz Kafka, Die Verwandlung. This has been translated, so this is available in English under the title The Metamorphosis. And yeah, it's really almost a B-movie plot that the story provides for us, because it's about a guy, Gregor Samsa, who wakes up one morning and discovers he has been turned into an insect. Now, it's commonly always kind of like seen as that this insect is a cockroach, but the text actually never tells us what type of insect he has turned into. We only know that it's a bug-like creature, because we get this out of Gregor's POV when he wakes up, and he feels strange, and he's lying on his back, and he can see not his hands, but he can see 6 legs kind of like up in the air waving around. So the name we're getting in the book is just Das Ungeziefer, the vermin. And this is of course very judgmental. No? It's different if I just talk about an insect or if I call something a vermin. And the whole story is an exploration about what happens if somebody is not a productive member of society anymore, of his family anymore, because the family has really strange reactions to Gregor and his affliction. You would think they might want to inquire, how did this happen, or can we do something for him? And their reactions are really, really strange. No? So overall, a very strange story. But again, this whole exploration of, where does our humanity start? Where does it end? No, what's the spectrum, basically, where we can still say, well, this is somebody who's still human, and now they're not anymore. This story has seen a lot of kind of like, let's say, retellings, reimaginings in different media. But one I want to mention here is again a short story by Beth Cato from 2013. And the title of this is The Echo in the Shell. And here we kind of like see this explored a bit more. Now, what I just said, where does our humanity, our humanness start? And where does it end? Because here we have an elderly woman who transforms into, in this case it is a cockroach, but also because she's elderly, we're not so sure, does this really happen? Is she perhaps suffering from dementia? So it's actually looking at a health condition in this case that mostly afflicts the elderly. Not only, there is early onset dementia as well, but also then how does that change a person, and is this still a person? No? Is this still a human being, or has this turned into something else? And the insect then is this kind of stand-in, because it's so alien and it's so different. My next text is from 1966, and this time we have one of the big names of science fiction, Frank Herbert. Yes, the guy who wrote Dune, that was published just 1 year before this in 1965. But in 1966 he comes up with this sci-fi horror story type thing called The Green Brain. Here we are in some type of jungle region that needs to be made habitable, because the pressures on people are quite severe. Nobody really knows where to put all the people because the population has exploded. And yes, we are in this jungle region, and yeah, it's basically burned down, but then also treated with some type of, yeah, how shall I say, antifungal stuff and other, yeah, not so good treatments for that. And one of the things that those treatments seem to trigger is that insects are not completely eradicated. So while all those chemical treatments ensure that the vegetation isn't really growing back, insects still flourish and they get bigger and bigger. So we have giant insects, but we also have humans that have strangely changed eyes. Yeah, does that sound Frank Herbert like? Yeah, no, we all know from Dune how the eyes might change. So we have this motif here again, but also those eyes get a bit more insect-like. And the question then is again, are they still human? Are there some type of aliens? Have the insects invaded them? So those are all kind of themes and motifs, tropes that we find in this story, or better, short novel. It's a short novel by Frank Herbert, The Green Brain. The next one is from 1974, and yes, it's the queen of science fiction, Ursula Le Guin, and it's one of her short stories, and it's called The Author of the Acacia Seeds. I have it in this volume here, Outer Space, Inner Lands, which is the second of the story collection, The Unreal and the Real. It comes in a lot of reprints. This story has been printed and reprinted in numerous times. Originally, it was in the collection Fellowship of the Stars from, as I say, 1974. So here we have an exploration again about humans and humanity. It's one of those Ursula Le Guin stories. She has done several of those where we have like a fictitious anthropological research project almost, and in this case the project is about what's called the text of the acacia seeds. And acacia seeds are tiny, they're teeny weeny things, they're more like dust almost. And the author is, because we're talking about insects, so the author is an insect. I will not tell you which insect we're talking, but the author, it turns out after a while, is an insect. And yeah, the story is very much an exploration about this idea that insects communicate like we as humans communicate. And yeah, it explores language, it explores how do we use language, how do we ascribe meaning to language, and when is a text still meaningful and when might that meaning be gone, because the texts we get from the acacia seeds, it's not complete, it's fragmentary. So that plays a huge role in this story, this fragmentary nature of this text, because yeah, when does our interpretation of something take over, and when does the text fail us in a way? So my next text again is another short story, and this time another big name, but a name that we today actually associate more with fantasy, and this is George R.R. Martin. Yeah, because he has a different life as a sci-fi author. So in this text from 1979 called Sand Kings, and as I say, a short story, a very successful and popular short story as well. It won the Hugo, the Nebula, and the Locus Award for, I think, Best Novelette. And it's the only George R.R. Martin story that has won the Nebula and the Hugo simultaneously. So quite a successful story. So in Sand Kings, we have a bored playboy who collects exotic animals. And he's always on the lookout for the next big thing, but also some of his animals die and he is looking to replace them. So he goes to this animal shop and finds what the owner tells him are sand kings. They're insect-like. They have kind of like an almost immobile, yeah, female insect that is quite large, and then more mobile, kind of like other ones that are her young. Um, and they live in colonies, and they build those kind of like almost sand castle-like structures. And he gets quite intrigued by them and says, okay, I want those, and brings them home. But he also finds out they're very docile. So he thinks of means of making them more aggressive, because one of the things that he does to alleviate his boredom is that he has those animals fight each other. And he wants the Sand Kings as well to fight each other. And they don't. So he starts starving them, and they get more aggressive and then basically start fighting. When the shop owner gets invited to one of those fights and finds out about that, she's not very amused about it and tells him, you know what, you go totally about it the wrong way, because if you treat them actually very well, they will eventually do what you want them to do. So stop doing this. And the story is kind of like a lot about resources, the fight over resources, what happens when resources get scarce, by having those insect colonies, again, almost like in an experiment-like condition. But of course, those insects do not stay in their little glass tanks, in their terrariums, and things go very wrong very quickly. Yeah, so this is Sand Kings by George R.R. Martin. Yeah, and if you, like me, still waiting for the continuation of A Song of Ice and Fire and are bored out of your skull and don't know what else to read, maybe this one will do it for you. My next story is from 1984, and it's by Octavia E. Butler, Bloodchild. In Bloodchild, we have, yeah, an alien race, the Tlilk or Tilk. I don't know how to pronounce this. It's spelled, I think, T-L-I-C. It reminds me a little bit of those click sounds that some African languages have, which might be deliberate, I don't know. This alien race has a really very weird life cycle that is modeled on a particular insect. Octavia E. Butler says that the insect she was thinking of was the botfly. Botflies, their eggs are spread by mosquito and mosquito bites. So the mosquito bites you, and the egg then gets into your bloodstream, and yeah, it burrows under your skin and then develops into a larvae that is basically feeding off you, and yeah, eventually will hatch and then burrow back out. Yeah, sounds disgusting, but this is what she used as the model on how this alien race actually yeah, basically gets their children. And they discover that the best host is actually humans, and not just humans, but human men. So they start to almost breed human males to use them for their own regenerative purposes. Octavia Butler kind of like packs a lot of the themes into the story that she normally kind of like looks at, like slavery. Not those men are, in a way, they are slaves to this alien race. It looks at things like symbiosis, but also dependence. So there's a lot to unpack in this, again, relatively short novella. My next text is from 2008, and I think we're talking here probably about the king of the insect worlds, and this is Adrian Tschaikovsky, and the novel a little bit thicker than what we were talking about before, Empires in Black and Gold. This is the first in the Shadow of the Apps series. Yeah, this is a quite an, how shall I say, interesting but also complex world, where we have different races that are modeled after different insects, if I remember right. It's a while that I've read this, so I'm a little bit hazy on some of the details, but this is basically it. So, and they're called kindern. So you have wasp kindern, you have ant kindern, you have no, and they have kind of like different bodily, they're close to those insects in parts, but also from their temperament, from the way they communicate, from the way they react in their behaviors, they are then modeled on those respective insects. So this is quite a long series. I should have looked up how many are in this, but there are a ton of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think there are at least 10 volumes in this series. If you are very interested in this, Alan from the Library of Alexandria, he is a big fan. He has quite a few videos on this series, so if you want more information on this. Adrian Tschaikovsky uses the insect motif in other books as well. Another very famous one of his is Children of Time. There you have giant spiders, for example, but you also have, again, things like terraforming, and yeah, it's upsides, it's downsides. So yeah, he definitely uses insects in a lot of innovative and quite interesting ways. My next author is China Miéville, and one of the books that uses insects is from 2000, and this is Perdido Street Station, the first in the Last Bus series. I haven't read this book yet, but I've heard that it has kind of fusions between humans and insects. So we have people who have a human body but then an insect head, for example, and I think one of those is also an artist. So I'm actually very interested in seeing how Miéville handles this and how this is kind of like described in the book. But the book I have read, and where the insect theme really comes to the fore, is this one, Embassy Town, from 2011. In Embassy Town, we have this almost frontier town in space. It's on a very kind of like uninhabitable, harsh planet, and humans can only survive there because they get the technology, and it's like a biotechnology thing as well, that is made by an insect race that is indigenous to this planet. And this novel kind of like, it explores now how do we relate to other races. In this case, it's more a trade relationship, but also there are people, like there is an anthropologist, there's also linguists who want to study them. And it's very focused on communication, because to trade with this insect race, humans have to communicate with them. And it's more or less impossible for humans to do, because those insects can make two sounds simultaneously. They can make one sound with their mandibles and their mouths, and the other sound they make with their wings. And they have to be not just simultaneously, they have to come from the same brain, so that those insects can actually understand the language. And humans have developed this really sophisticated system of cloning humans. So we have two humans then, so that they can speak with this one brain, but each then makes then the respective sound. And what sounds good at first kind of like starts to unravel, and it ends in a very horrific incident. And that's all I'm going to tell you, because I don't want to spoil this book, because it's really interesting and really well done in its exploration of communication primarily, but again, a lot of other topics packed into this. And my last example is a book that I reviewed only very recently, Hurley, God's War. This is from 2011, again, like Embassy Town. And it's the first in a trilogy called the Beldame Apocrypha. And yeah, here we are on a planet again that's very harsh. The conditions are very desert-like. It's very hard for humans to survive. It's never really said, but the suspicion is that this planet is like a form of Earth. And yeah, all the technology that's left on this planet is actually insect technology. If you want to run a car, you need a bunch of insects that you can like fill into the tank so that the car runs, because their secretions then are used to fuel the vehicle. There are other uses, like, as I say, all technology from lights to refrigeration are run on insects. But there's also a lot of magic in this world that is related to the insects. And the magic users have this ability that they can communicate with the insects through their pheromones and can actually manipulate insects. So yeah, God's War from 2011. So, like always, a very subjective and eclectic selection. If you have any other ideas or know of other texts that might interest me, as always, I'm very grateful for your recommendations, and you can put them down in the comment section. Yeah, thank you for watching. Happy reading and all the best.